1. As a result of the verdict in Plessy versus Ferguson, Jim Crow laws or segregation spread across the country and segregation increased even more. Number 2. Match the important events of the Civil Rights Movement to their effects. Brown versus Board of Education, Civil Rights Act. The Supreme Court outlawed segregation in schools, outlawed discrimination based on color, race, or religion in public places and businesses. Number 3, the Civil Rights Act of 1964 caused African Americans to lose or gain protections by the federal government. Number 4, match the key people of the Civil Rights Movement to the event they are most associated. Thurgood Marshall, Lyndon Johnson. Brown versus Board of Education, Civil Rights Act, and Voting Rights Act. Number 5, what was the main purpose of the Civil Rights Act of 1964? To prohibit discrimination based on color, race, religion, or sex, to allow states to make their own laws regarding issues of discrimination. Number 6, how did the March on Washington impact the Civil Rights Movement? It ended discrimination across the South. It influenced Congress to pass civil rights legislation. How did Martin Luther King Jr. work to change people's minds about civil rights? Through violent protests or through non-violent protests? 8, who is described in the box? Organized sit-ins in Nashville, part of the Freedom Riders, organized Freedom Ride to Capital of Alabama. Diane Nash or Rosa Parks? Number 9, why did the Freedom Riders ride interstate buses? To determine if illegal segregation was still happening on interstate buses, to get to protests that were located in Alabama. Number 10, choose the correct word or phrase to complete each sentence. Blank gave the I Have a Dream speech at the March on Washington. He wanted the country to pass civil rights legislation, but it did not happen immediately. Is that John F. Kennedy or Martin Luther King Jr.? 11, in 1954, the Supreme Court ruled in the case of Brown versus Board of Education that schools could no longer be segregated. This decision was a big step toward integration or segregation, where all students would have equal opportunities for education. 12, why did President Kennedy announce a goal of putting a man on the moon by 1970? The goal was part of the arms race between the U.S. and the Soviet Union. The goal was part of the space race between the U.S. and the Soviet Union. 13, what did the statement directly lead to? History is on our side. We will bury you. The international arms race, the end of the Cold War. During the Cuban Missile Crisis, people were worried that an arms race might start or a nuclear war might start. 15, a rural area or suburb is an area on the edge of a city where people who work in the city often live. 16, what is one way the United States benefited from the space race? The United States developed a response to the Cuban Missile Crisis. The United States developed new products from related research. Number 17, the period from 1946 through 1964 is called the baby boom or civil rights movement in U.S. history. Military personnel returning from World War II came home, got married, and started families. 18, with increased or decreased access to automobiles, more people wanted to drive greater distances than just to and from work and around their towns. 19, why was the Berlin Wall built? The Soviet Union did not want people leaving East Berlin for West Berlin. The United States wanted to build an Iron Curtain. 20, why did the mass media market develop after World War II? People had money to spend on entertainment. The government used military technology to encourage it. 21, how did the advertising industry grow after World War II? They used radio, television, and movie theaters for ads. They used mass media to find employees. 22, how did the interstate highway system affect the United States? It reduced travel time to and from places, or it reduced the need for cars. 23, match the people of the Civil Rights Movement with the event they are associated. Martin Luther King Jr., Rosa Parks. March on Washington, Montgomery bus boycott.